Let's take a trip around the curve. For a minute, it looked like the WGA and SAG strikes might be nearing an end, with AMPTP beginning to return to the table for negotiating. Alas, that did not happen. The WGA and AMPTP could not reach an agreement, so this strike continues indefinitely. SAG-AFTRA's Duncan Crabtree, Ireland, provides an update on Indie Picks promotion at festivals, and the union has said that the strike won't delay the Walking Dead spinoffs. The 3 extensions of the AMC franchise were completed ahead of the actors' walkout. Stephen Amell caused outrage this past week when he called the actors' strike, quote-unquote, myopic and a reductive negotiating tactic, end quote. The Heels star has walked back his comments in a lengthy Instagram post, saying his support for SAG-AFTRA is, quote, is unconditional and I stand with them, end quote. Meryl Streep, Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, and more donate millions to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation amid the strike. Other A-list donors include George and Amal Clooney, Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness, Ryan Reynolds, and Blake Lively. In addition to all of that, a SAG election is underway. Fran Drescher is to face Maya Gilbert Dunmore for president, Jolie Fisher and Peter Antico vie for secretary-treasurer, and yours truly is running for a national delegate seat. In case you don't know who yours truly is, that would be moi. Producer Janet Yang was re-elected president of the Academy of the Motion Picture Arts and Sciences by the organization's Board of Governors. Chris Albrecht and George Grenier formed Firm to adapt Latin American and Spanish content globally, entering a partnership with Sequoia Studios. Lisa Marie Presley's daughter, Riley Keough, was named the sole heir of the Presley estate and the new owner of Graceland. Asteroid City hits Peacock next week, and Barbie will start streaming on Max in the fall as David Zaslav touts traditional window. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse will be available on digital August 8th and on 4K UHD and Blu-ray on September 5th, including over 90 minutes of exclusive extras. Lionsgate announces Past Lives arriving September 19th on Blu-ray and digital and DVD, and Confidential Informant will be arriving August 15th on Blu-ray and digital DVD. After Warner Brothers' Japanese arm called out its celebration of memes mixing imagery from Barbie and Atomic Blast, the studio admitted they were insensitive and promises to remove them. Ron Howard and Brian Grazer's Impact and Ava DuVernay's Array crew joins forces to become the largest hiring network for the entertainment industry. Nancy Grace is investigating a Long Island serial killer for a quick turnaround special for ID. Jason Momoa's hosted Shark Week nabs the highest rating in 3 years. Pedro Almodovar's Strange Way of Life gets an October release. The Sony Pictures classic short film received rave reviews at this year's Cannes Film Festival. A debut date is set for the Tom Wolfe documentary Radical Wolf by Kino Lorber. It'll open September in New York and LA before a nationwide expansion. Speaking of Almodovar, him and Spike Lee are getting tribute awards at this year's TIFF, and TIFF announced their documentary lineup with films on Louis C.K., the latest from Raoul Peck, Errol Morris, Lucy Walker, and Roger Ross Williams. Documentary on spy novelist John le Carre, a.k.a. David Cornwell, is coming from Apple TV, The Ink Factory, and Oscar winner Errol Morris. Joe McHale and Beck Bennett are starring in Office Race, and Skydance lands the rights to Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer book series with plans to develop a feature film around the iconic Private Eye. Scream 7 lands Happy Death Day director Christopher Landon. The filmmaker replaced Radio Silence, who directed the last 2 installments of the horror franchise. Share partners with Irving Azoff's Iconic Artists Group for her catalog rights. The company represents such iconic artists as Dean Martin, David Crosby, and Linda Ronstadt. Leah Remini is suing Scientology for harassment, seeking an end to the church's alleged suppressive persons retribution policies. Betty Ann Bruno, Wizard of Oz Munchkin, who became a longtime local TV reporter, passed away at age 91, and Paul Rubin, Pee Wee Herman, passed away at age 70. Jean-Michel Basquiat feature is in the works from Boardwalk Pictures and Quinn Wilson. On a brand new episode of the Curvy Critic with Carla Renata, we have Stranger Things star Grace Van Dien, who stars in the brand new feature What Comes Around. And her director, Miss Amy Redford, is talking all about it. We also have a review of the Universal Pictures film The Last Voyage of Demeter, starring Corey Hawkins, and he is doing the daggone thing. It's a Dracula project, another Bram Stoker joint. You know that's not my favorite, but I'm going to review it anyway. And we're going to talk about The Eternal Memory, a film I told you guys about earlier in this year that was at Sundance. Plus, we're going to take a look back at Coming to America and Risky Business, who are respectively celebrating 35 and 40 years. Coming up on The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata right now.
Hold up. Wait a minute. I wish you love, peace, and hair grease.
Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.
Yeah, you know the one that shoots straight from the hip.
This is Carla Renata, a.k.a. the Curvy Critic, and I shoot straight from the hip.
Yeah, you know the one that shoots straight from the hip.
What's up, y'all? How you doing? Happy Sunday. And thank you so much for joining me for another episode, a brand new episode of The Curvy Critic with Carla Renata. I'm your host, Carla Renata, so welcome. Thanks for coming by. And what we do here is we talk about movies and we interview people below and above the line in the film industry. So as we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks or so, there is a strike happening with the WGA and SAG. So there won't be as many talent interviews here, and I'll be doing a lot of throwbacks until the strike is over and we get back to some sense of normalcy. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I usually start the podcast every week with saying hello to my peeps in the chat room. So hello, Camila's Content, and hello, Brandon. And Brandon always got news for me. So Brandon tells me today that he has another animation session tomorrow. So yay, Brandon, thank you. And yes, hi, Camila's Content. Love you. Thank you for dropping by. All right, so having said that, let's talk about what I did last week. I didn't do a whole lot last week because it was kind of a slow week for me. But what I did do was your girl actually went to an audition, honey, with these two lovely ladies. In the middle is Shirley Jordan, and on the far right of your screen is my girl Dell. We were at an audition, can't say what it was for, but we were just so happy to be in a room together. We snapped that picture. And then I watched this docuseries on National Geographic called Never Say Never with Jeff Jenkins. I just like saying Jeff Jenkins. And I love his little face. I love that there's a little chocolate brown boy with twisty hair that is plus size that was doing everything from whitewater rafting to sumo wrestling to child, you name it, he was doing it, and I was there for it. But it's on National Geographic, and I got my only teehee watching that. And then I popped on over to Netflix and I watched Ladies First, a story of women in hip hop. So you guys know that hip hop is celebrating its 50th year this year. It's a really great docuseries. I highly suggest checking it out. And on a really bitter note and sad part of news, this happened. So I've told you guys that I was in The Lion King and that I'm an actress. I've said that a zillion times. And this young man is Clifton Oliver. He played our big Simba in the Los Angeles production of The Lion King, which opened in LA at the Pantages Theater in the year 2000. So that was 23 years ago. And Clifton passed away this week. We have no idea what he passed away from, but I'm going to come back on camera for this. Clifton was an integral part of our family. He was really young. He was really green. I think The Lion King may have been his first gig. And he was always very sweet. He always had a smile on his face. He was always positive. Never saw him in a bad mood. He was just a really wonderfully kind person. And so as that news hit me, I got flooded with a bunch of memories about The Lion King, and I was super sad, and I couldn't figure out why I was so sad about Clifton. because I hadn't seen him in a really long time, but I remember him vividly. But I think it was because that particular production was really special to me for a variety of reasons. And I just was really sad and saddened to hear about him leaving us. And just, he's the first one of our cast to pass away. So it was a very crazy week for all of us. And yeah, so I just wanted to say, give some love and light to his family members and his partner that are still here, and to my LKLA family. All right. So having said that, let's get into these reviews, honey. So I told y'all about this, the last voyage of the Demeter. And so the Demeter is so let me just start off. There's a lot of different Dracula projects. Y'all know horror is not my thing. I'm not a big fan of horror because I'm a big old scaredy cat. But I was encouraged to go see this particular. Let me put this over here. I was encouraged to go see this particular um, Bram Stoker chapter of the Dracula story. So this one kind of deals with Dracula as a monster before he was a human being, and it takes place in 1897, which was slightly after slavery was over, like maybe 30 years or so after slavery. And it deals with this young doctor, a young black doctor, Mr. Clemens, who is played by Corey Hawkins. And if Corey Hawkins' name looks familiar, he played Dr. Dre in that Public Enemy movie not too long ago. He was one of the guys in the Ava DuVernay biopic that was not biopic, the David DuVernay project that was on Netflix. He's been in a plethora of different things, but this time he's in this period piece, and I was like, okay, let me see what my brother's doing in this period piece. Hopefully he killing it, and he did. He killed it. But the gist of the film is this 1897 crew sails from Carpathia to England and find that they are carrying a very dangerous cargo. The cargo would be Dracula. When I tell you, I spent half of this movie with my eyes closed because I'm a big old scaredy cat. I am the worst scaredy cat on the face of the earth. If anything look like it's gonna sound like a monster, looks like a monster, I'm like this watching the movie and then going like this trying to see. Just pitiful, pitiful. But that's the gist of it. And it's an origin story of Dracula before, I guess, he takes over. I guess during the Bram Stoker things, I guess at some point he takes over human bodies to become human and not be in this monster form. So having said that, let me just say that a couple of things about this film. So this is the second of two 2023 Universal films featuring Count Dracula this year. The other one was Renfield with Nicolas Cage, and I'll be talking about Nicolas Cage a little later. The film is based on a brief subplot in the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker, in which the ship carries Dracula's coffin from Transylvania to England. During the night, Dracula kills and feeds off of all the crew members except a crew member who escapes by leaping off the ship and taking his chances with the sea. The captain binds himself to the steering wheel and ties a cross in his hands so that he can hold Dracula at bay, but dies of exhaustion before the ship reaches England. Viggo Mortensen was attached to star in this film for 2 years before he ceased involvement, and we don't really know why his involvement came to a screeching halt, but that was that. Corey Hawkins, as I said, plays this black doctor, Mr. Clemens, and he was really, really good. He takes total command of the accent. He takes total command of the role. It's a lot of action. This film is very heavily action driven. He does really, really well with that. And I've never seen him in a role where he's had to embody all of that. So this was a stretch for him, but he rose to the challenge. I love two things. The soundtrack was bombastically intense, which kind of drove the action of the film. And I absolutely love that. It was filmed very dark. So it's a lot of muted greens and grays and blues that you look at while you're watching, and black while you're watching the film. And there's one thing that really stuck out to me. One of the characters, when they're trying to figure out how they're going to find their way from point A to point B, one of the characters says, you can lose a chart, You can lose a compass, but you can never lose the stars. And I think that that is probably the biggest nugget kernel that you will get in watching this film, because as long as you follow the stars, you can stay on course. As long as you follow the stars, you'll find your way home. And all these people wanted on the ship was to find their way home and be rid of Dracula. Having said that, it was really, this film was painfully slow. It was painfully slow, and it was a lot of action. Like I said, it was directed by Andre Overdahl, and it hits theaters on August 11th. Yeah, it was slow. It was a slow drive, y'all. And what I will say about it is, if you are a fan of Corey Hawkins, I would suggest seeing it to see him. But it's very, very slow paced, and it's a lot of action sequences going on. So that is this film right here, The Last of the Demeter. And this would be Corey Hawkins. I keep talking about him, and y'all haven't seen him, but that is Corey Hawkins. And that's that film. All right. So this young lady right here, her name is Amy Redford. If that name sounds familiar to you, she is the daughter of Robert Redford, and she is a very wonderful director, actress, producer in her own right. She has directed this film that's called What Comes Around, and it's based on a play by Scott Oregon, and the play was called The Thing with Feathers. And in this thriller, directed by Amy, there's a young love affair that becomes a menacing game of cat and mouse, and no one in this story, no one is who they seem to be. Not one single solitary person. And that's a little scary, only because, and I will come back on and talk to you about it. It's scary because the way you think this is going to play out is not how it plays out. And I don't want to tell you because I don't want to ruin it for you. But what I will say is three things. It's a story that is the second one of these stories that I've seen in the last couple of years that centers around young people and the internet and texting people that they shouldn't be texting. So it just brings more attention to that particular subject and lets you know, people that are parents out there that got these teen girls or teen boys, you need to get a hold of them phones and know what they're doing with these phones, because you never know who they're talking to, and they can be putting themselves and you in danger. Having said that, it also is a film about the parents not being in control by not being able to get a hold of this phone. So there's that. And there is a plot twist, a huge plot twist. I don't want to tell you what it is because, like I said, I don't want to ruin it for you. But it's a huge plot twist. But without further ado, I will continue to let Miss Amy talk more about this film and what it means. Oh, and before I say that, let me just tell you who's in it. So if you guys watch Stranger Things, you know this face. That's Grace Van Dien, and she is the star of this movie called What? What Comes Around. So without further ado, I'm going to let you take a look and a listen to this interview with the director of What Comes Around, Miss Amy Redford, and then we'll come back and take a look back at Coming to America and Risky Business. Hi, Amy. It's so nice to see you again.
So nice to see you. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. What Comes Around, man, that struck a chord for me. I actually wasn't in that exact situation, but something very similar. So it really struck a chord for me. But what I want to talk to you about is, I know that you took a hiatus from directing for a little bit. What was it about Scott's book that drew you back in?
Well, yeah, I mean, it started as a play, and I felt like he was kind of investigating some certain concepts that I felt like were under investigated in terms of human behavior. I'm now a mom, and I was once a young woman, and we are all fallible. And I think once we start to demonize each other, we lose a lot of opportunity for compassion and understanding, and to maybe mitigate some of the downstream harm. So it felt very right to get back in the director's chair, and I felt like the way that he uses genre to kind of motor through some of these ideas was just compelling as a storyteller.
There was a quote that both Beth and Eric / the other name says, and I just wanted to get your thoughts about it. Beth says, people want certain things to be a certain way to begin to believe that it's true. And then Eric says, some people don't want to believe things, so they block it out. What does that mean for you on the other side of shooting this film? Because those are some very deep statements.
I think a lot of us have experienced gaslighting on some level, and some of us have experienced doing it. And there is causes why you have to block out your own behavior and you're not willing to take responsibility. The implications might not just be to you, but other people around you. And so you keep that inside for fear of letting it out. And, when you're on the other side of that and you realize that your experience is being questioned, it can really damage your mental health. And we have evidence, that generational trauma is about not identifying some of the genesis of these behaviors. And my hope is that all of us can take as much responsibility for ourselves and our behavior as possible so that we can prevent the harm that can come from the downstream effects.
And what I also wanted to talk about is, I read something where you said that this is more than just a teen drama film, right? This is a story about a mother and a daughter and their relationship and how it invites the discourse of a polarity of guilt and innocence. And I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because mother and daughter relationships can be very tricky. They're very, very tricky. I'm someone's daughter and on a daily basis. You're someone's daughter and you're someone's mother. So I just want to know how it hit you in that regard.
I look at my daughter when I don't tell the truth, when I'm trying to protect her from some reality, when I'm trying to make it so that she doesn't get jaded or doesn't walk out into the world feeling like there isn't an abundance of possibility. And yet calibrating, telling her the truth and giving her freedom has been an ongoing dance. And I know that what I endeavor to do is acknowledge what she sees and ask more questions and say less statements so that I can understand who she really is, and part of that I learned from my mother. My mom is an incredible woman, but she also grew up in a very specific time. So hopefully we can continue to evolve as mother and daughter and, citizens and be, more curious.
Just to wrap it up, Amy, I just want to say, I feel like What Comes Around is a very important film just by virtue of the fact that it leans into the whole technology thing of how kids can text and you don't know what they're doing. And when you ask them, they get very, protective and secretive about it. I think this is a very important film for that particular situation. And it also is important because it speaks to what you were saying about asking more questions and making less statement and making a statement. Did I say that right? I say that right.
Yes, you did. I mean, I think, we gave our children these devices and then we walked out of the building. And to be mad at them for the fact that they're using them how they want to use them is a little bit insane. So I think we need to come back into the building and figure out how we as protectors can give them some of the wisdom of our own experience without judging them for communicating in this world that, we handed them. So, I'm hoping that we can see the good. Some of it online can be very funny. It can be connective tissue. It can democratize ideas that could be inaccessible to people. On the other hand, it can be scary as shit, So,
right? Right?
Yes.
Well, just in closing it out, Amy Redford, you are a deep doll. I'm so honored to be able to have an opportunity to speak to you again. And good luck with your docuseries, The Lincoln Project. I wanted to get that in before we closed out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it aired on Showtime. So, it was some great filmmakers involved in that one too. So
cool. Well, thank you, Mama. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So thank you, Amy Redford. That was so wonderful. I really enjoyed talking to her, and I really enjoyed having what's going on my light today, y'all. My light is trying to betray me. There we go. Because, child, I was looking like a raisinette. You know how I feel about lighting. I got a thing about lighting. I hate when it's terrible. Let me go to the chat room real quick because some people are talking to me. And I want y'all to know I'm navigating this by myself so I can get to you and talk to you when I can. But let me give, there was somebody that said, oh, so Camila's so can I have a shout out? Yes, you can, Camila's content. There is your shout out, baby. And then of course there's always Brandon, and Brandon shouting out people for me too. I love him. Then Harper Style came in. Hi, ham, blue, purple, peace. Peace. Love you. Thank you for stopping by. And then of course my little person, Brandon. I love Brandon. He's always here. So those are the shout outs. If you've never been here before and this is your first time, give me a big thumbs up to let me know you were here, because I don't know if you watch it unless you give me a thumbs up. So, let a sister know that let a sister know that you were here, and give me a little shout out, and yeah, and we'll go from there. So let me just say one more thing about this What Comes Around movie. Oh, wait, hold on. Somebody's talking to me again. Oh, one more comment from Brandon. Brandon says, I can't wait to watch the Spider-Verse Across the Spider-Verse again on digital. I know it's going to be interesting to see it in a different format. Absolutely. Um, so let me say one more thing about this What Comes Around movie. The one thing about the movie that struck me is when I said to Amy that I had been in a situation like that before. I had been involved in a relationship where the person didn't stalk me, but when I broke up with them, they couldn't really accept the fact that I broke up with them, and they just kept coming at me, and it got to a point where it got a little scary. So that's some of what the film is about. But like I said, I don't want to ruin it for y'all just because it's a lot going on, and I want you to be able to enjoy it. All right, let me talk about this movie that I told you guys about during Sundance. It's called The Eternal Memory, and it got picked up by MTV Documentary Films. It's directed by Meyer Alberti, and it deals with Augusto, who you see there on your right, and Paulina, who have been together for 25 years. 8 years ago, Augusto was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and they both fear the day that he no longer recognizes her. The thing that is very touching about this particular film is that Augusto is also a journalist. So imagine being a journalist where you use your brain to harken back to all the things that to help you with your stories, and now you can barely remember your stories, you can barely remember who you are, you can barely remember who your loved one is. And I can tell you that dealing with someone who is a loved one that is having some memory issues is very, very difficult, because they get angry, and their anger comes out being it's like they're lashing out at you, but they're not really mad at you. They're just frustrated with the situation that they're going through. They've been their whole lives, they've been independent and been able to navigate things on their own. And now that's becoming not so much the case for them. But this film, you guys, you will cry, cry, cry. It is heartbreaking, but it's also heartfelt, and it's excellently done, and I highly suggest you checking it out. Again, it's called The Eternal Memory, and it will be in theaters this week. All right, now to get out of that somber mood, baby, and get into some fun. Now, y'all know I love me some Eddie Murphy, and you know I love me some Coming to America. As you had seen during the pandemic, I did an interview with both Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy and the entire cast of Coming to America, Coming to America 2. To talk to them about the sequel. Now, this is what Eddie and Arsenio looked like then, and this is what they look like now. They aged well, right? And they're doing all the characters. They're doing all the characters from before, the old men in the barbershop, the Randy, all of those characters. So now the reason I'm talking about Coming to America is that it turned 35 years old this year. And it was directed by John Landis. If John Landis's name sounds familiar, he directed Werewolf in London, which was a thriller. And he also directed, it was a horror thriller, and he also directed Thriller, like Michael Jackson's Thriller. He directed that music video, which was iconic. So just a few things. I love to tell stuff about the films that I find out along the way. So what I found out is that Eddie Murphy handpicked John Landis to direct this film. They had worked previously together on Trading Places, which was inspired by 1930s social comedies. Similarly, John Landis modeled this movie, Coming to America, after 1930s romantic comedies. So, having said that, two of the guys from Trading Places, Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy, reprised their roles in Coming to America. So you remember the scene where Sherry Headley and Eddie Murphy are taking a walk after they've had this nice romantic dinner, and there's these two white men on the ground panhandling. They are actually Mortimer and Randolph Duke from Trading Places, i.e. Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy. So there's that. So now let's get into some really fun stuff. So Eddie Murphy's romantic lead in the movie was Sherry Headley. There is Sherry Headley on the left as she looked when she filmed the first Coming to America. There she is when she filmed the second one. Again, she aged well, right? But I love talking about people who almost got the part. And one of the people that was in contention for the part was Vanessa Williams. Can you imagine what that would have looked like? Vanessa Williams was originally considered for the role of Lisa McDowell, and now and not for nothing, but they said that there were over 1,000 candidates for the role of Lisa McDowell and Coming to America. That's insane, right? Absolutely insane. Now, the girl that played her sister is this sis right here. She played Patrice. Now, she was the funniest thing in the movie. She was so incredibly funny. And the girl that played Patrice, her real name is dun 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 dun. I'm gonna leave y'all hanging on that one. But anywho, she was not in the second production. And so we don't know why she wasn't in the second production. We don't know what happened that, caused her not to be in the second production. And I'll talk about quite a few people who weren't in the second production, but she was one of them. But that was then, and this is what she looks like now. She don't look like Nicolas Cage. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Let me find her picture. That's horrible. Why did I say she looked like Nicolas Cage? I need to be shot. That is just horrible. Let me find her picture, y'all. I know it's in here somewhere. I know I put it in here. Or maybe I didn't. Dun 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 dun. Dun. Oh, I didn't. Dang. I'll find it and put it in here. That's messed up. But she don't look like Nicolas Cage. I tell you that much. That is terrible. I can't believe I did that. Anywho, her name is Allison Dean, and she is doing really well now. She is living a quiet life and doing extremely, extremely well these days. But baby, I can't believe I just pulled up that picture and said that was her. That was horrible that I did that. I should be shot. Anyway, let me go on. So also in the second version, Sherry Headley is seen here with Leslie Jones. And Leslie Jones supposedly had a one-night stand with Arsenio Hall's character that resulted in Jermaine Fowler being his son. Look at Eddie Murphy looking at him. It's hilarious. Louis Anderson was in the first film. He's no longer with us, and he worked at McDowell's. I'm going to talk about McDowell's in a minute. This was Louis then, and this is Louis, what he looked like right before he passed away. He went on to become an Emmy winner for a show on HBO. Vanessa Bell Calloway was in that cast. You remember her. She was the girl that he said bark like a dog and stand on one foot. That would be her. And then the part that made me really laugh is I found out that, so we all know that King Jeffrey Joffer was played by James Earl Jones, right? He played King Jeffrey Joffer, who was Hakeem, Eddie Murphy's dad. But the person that they really wanted to consider for the part was Sidney Poitier. Is that bananas or what? And not for nothing, but in this picture right here, that's Madge Sinclair and that's John Amos. In Coming to America, Madge Sinclair plays Hakeem's mother. John Amos plays Sherry Headley's character's mother. But Lisa plays Lisa's mother. John Amos plays Lisa's mother. Madge Sinclair plays Hakeem's mother. But in reality, this picture is from Roots. They played husband and wife in Roots. Madge Sinclair also was not in the second version because she had passed away from cancer some years earlier. Another person that was in the movie is Eric LaSalle on your far right. Eric LaSalle played her crazy, shady boyfriend in Coming to America. But Eric LaSalle would go on to have fame with ER on NBC. That's him when he was in Coming to America, and that's what he looked like when he was in ER. Now, McDowell's. Once a year, there is a McDonald's that turns into McDowell's every year in honor of Coming to America. And Eddie Murphy says he absolutely loves that. He also says that Coming to America is one of his favorite roles that he's ever played. This was the poster from Coming to America 2. And this was a publicity shot of the entire family in the film. The young lady on the far left in the orange is Eddie Murphy's daughter, Bella, who got married earlier this year. All right. So that's all. I think that's, wait, do I have some more? Oh, wait, I have some more news about, I have one more thing about Coming to America. So following the first film, there was a CBS pilot produced, and that pilot had Tommy Davidson as Prince Tariq and Paul Bates, who you see on the far right, as Oha. The pilot went unsold, but was televised on July 4th, 1989 as an episode of CBS Summer Playhouse. There were 5 lawsuits over this movie after it was released. The only one that actually went to court was when humorist and columnist Art Buchwald sued Paramount Pictures, alleging that Paramount took an option on his story, but then took his script idea and turned it into Coming to America. Paramount settled with Buchwald for $150,000. Writers David Sheffield and Barry Blaustein, have claimed that they took most of the blame for this since they wrote the script on their own, not knowing that the idea was stolen. Yet afterwards, they were falsely accused of stealing the screenplay, which they think may have cost them a membership of the Academy of Motion Pictures Art and Sciences. That is scandalous, right? We talked about the sequel that happened in 2019. That sequel, which this picture is from, happened 31 years after the original. And that's that picture that I showed you of John Amos and Madge Sinclair. Sinclair, John Amos played the grown Kunta Kinte, and Madge Sinclair played his wife in Roots. And James Earl Jones had played their great-great-grandson, Alex Haley, in the sequel Roots: The Next Generation. So that's all we have to say about Coming to America. Now let's get to risky business. Y'all know I love me some Tom Cruise. Risky Business is celebrating 40 years, y'all. I know that is bananas. Bananas. It was filmed in 1983. It was directed and written by Paul Brickman. It starred Tom Cruise, Rebecca De Mornay, and John Pantoliano. And it deals with a Chicago teenager who's looking for fun at home while his parents are away, but the situation quickly gets out of hand. This was like a theme in the 80s with teenagers. Like, remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off and American Graffiti? All of these films always dealt with people whose parents weren't at home. But this was another one in that zeitgeist. Now, we all know that Tom Cruise was cast in the role of Joel Goodman. But these are some of the people. Wait, before we get to that, let's talk about that iconic dance. Rumor has it that this dance where he sings to old time rock and roll, this dance was completely improvised. In the script, it simply asked Tom Cruise it says Cruise was simply instructed to dance to rock music. And there we got the socks, the shirt, the mic. People actually dress up on Halloween as Tom Cruise in Risky Business. Now, having said that, let's go back. So Tom Cruise almost didn't end up playing Joel. These people almost ended up playing Joel. Nicolas Cage was up for the part. Michael J. Fox was up for the part. Sean Penn was up for the part. Timothy Hutton almost played Joel. Tom Hanks almost played Joel. John Cusack almost played Joel. All of these people, you see how they all kind of look alike? They all have the same look, but none of them ended up playing that role. And we ended up getting Tom Cruise. And thank goodness that we did, because it ended up being a game changer for his career. All of these actors that I mentioned had other things that were game changers for their careers. But Risky Business was the one for Tom Cruise. His leading lady in this film was Rebecca De Mornay. And she played like, she was, for lack of a better way to say it, she was the lady of the night that he happens to meet, and she helps him work out a little business deal. Now, before we get into that, I want to go back to Timothy Hutton real quick. Timothy Hutton actually was the first choice for the role, but turned it down in favor of working with Sidney Lumet on Daniel in New York City. Tom Cruise and Timothy Hutton both starred in Taps in 81, and Hutton was a little old for the role. He would have been 24 at the time, and Tom Cruise was 20. Also, he had already played the repressed North Shore rich boy with a dark side in Ordinary People, and would play that part again, essentially, in Falcon and the Snowman. So, it was time for him to like move on to some greener pastures. But having said that, let's go back to Rebecca De Mornay. So, Rebecca De Mornay was super, super sexy in this film. Rumor has it that her and Tom Cruise dated briefly, either during the shoot or after the shoot. But this is the funny part. Like, I love talking about people that almost got the role. So one person that almost got that role was Sharon Stone. That's what Sharon Stone looked like at the time she was auditioning for Lana. She auditioned for the role. She didn't get it. But another big movie star auditioned for the role too, Kim Basinger. Kim Basinger auditioned, turned down the role because she didn't like the script. Can you imagine? I said, okay. After Risky Business, Rebecca De Mornay would go on to star in And God Created Woman, one of my personal favorites, The Hand That Rocked the Cradle, The Three Musketeers, and more. Now, Joe Pantoliano, affectionately called in the business Joey Pants, played Lana's pimp. One of the other people that was considered for that role, other than Joey Pants, pictured here, get a good look at Joey Pants. One of the other people that was considered for the role was Richard Dreyfuss. He was considered for the role of Guido. And you're going to love this one. Frank Sinatra was considered for the role of Guido. Sinatra was almost in his 60s at this point and a little too old to be playing a young, tough, athletic pimp who chases Joel all around the city and is supposed to be in a love triangle with Joel and Lana. So that's why the role went to Joey Pants. And then, so I just thought that was so incredibly interesting. Joey Pantoliano, seen here, let me go back to Joey Pants. Joey Pants has been in blockbuster and cult favorites like Memento, The Goonies, The Matrix, Bad Boys, a slew of other credits. But fans may also recognize him from his recurring role as Ralph Cifaretto on HBO's The Sopranos. It took 10 years to cast Tom Cruise in the role of Joel. Why did it take 10 years? Let me tell you why it took 10 years. So it took 10 years for them to cast him in the role of Joel because not 10 years, but 10 years prior to casting him in Jerry Maguire, Cameron Crowe spoke to Tom Cruise for an interview and asked him what he thought this movie was about. So whatever you think Risky Business is about, this is what it's about. Tom Cruise said it's about today's capitalistic society. In 1986, do the means justify the ends? Do you want to help people or do you just want to make money? Joel is questioning all of that, and so am I. I'm not saying I'm some erudite political figure, but it bothers me. At least I'm asking the question. The movie is Joel's exploration of society, how he gets sucked into this wild capitalistic ride. There's that whole situation where they're trying to make money. He sells stuff. They take his furniture. It's a whole situation. If you haven't seen it, it's funny, but it is very dark and very deep all at the same time. This film also served as a cinematic debut for Bronson Pinchot, who you end up seeing in Beverly Hills Cop is Sarge. And my good girlfriend Megan Mullally was also in Risky Business. That's bananas, right? Bananas. So my curvy classics for today, you guys, just to go back, was Risky Business with Tom Cruise, Rebecca De Mornay, and Joey Pantoliano. And then the other one was one of my favorites, Coming to America. I talk about Coming to America all the time. In closing, I want you guys to take a look at The Eternal Memory, which is a documentary produced by MTV Documentary Films. Check out What Comes Around, directed by Amy Redford, and check out The Last Voyage of the Demeter, a Universal Pictures joint, which hits theaters on August 11th. So having said that, next week, I'm probably going to be talking. I'm not sure if I'm going to be talking about these films or not because of the strike. It's been funky to see films and some of the screenings I've missed, but I'll definitely be talking about Telemarketers on Max and The Monkey King on Netflix and Red, White, and Royal Blue. Whether or not I'll be talking about Strays or Blue Beetle, I don't know. We'll see next week. But let me go back to the chat room and see if there's any more comments over there for me. No, there are not. Great. And just say hello to everybody and say goodbye to everybody. And for those of you that tuned in real time, thank you so much. I appreciate you. For those of you that are watching after the fact, I appreciate you too. Because you know what? I can't do this without you. Without you watching it, it just doesn't make any sense for me. So having said that, I will see you next week. I may have a special guest in the studio with me next week since I'm a little light on movies. I may have a special guest in studio. We'll work on that and see what happens. But until the next time, y'all, love, peace, and hair grease, and deuces. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.